LowDOWN, a dancing room podcast. Eleanor, Stewart, and Danielle McKinney discuss the lowdown on developing reading skills in learners with dancing room. Over to you, Hannah. I'm Marla.
Thanks, Jody. Welcome to the LowDOWN podcast. I'm Marla Folden, an SLP with the Down Syndrome Resource Foundation, and with me is the absolute gem of a human being, Hannah Mahmood, who is OT here and co-host as well. Hi, Hannah.
Hi, Marla. How are you?
Oh, so good.
Good.
So glad to have you with me.
I know. Right back at you on that gem comment. Thank you.
Thanks. Before we continue today with our episode, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button and leave a review of our podcast on whatever platform you use. And remember to check out our episode pages because we put cool things there. Related resources for each episode, and some of them come from us at the DSRF and some come from our guests. So definitely have a look. And you can follow the Down Syndrome Resource Foundation at our website, www.dsrf.org, and on Instagram and Twitter by following at DSRF Canada. Today, we have a really exciting topic for you, and that is literacy.
Yeah.
And we love talking about all things Down syndrome, as I'm sure you've heard by now if you're a longtime listener. But literacy holds a really special place in our hearts because the expectations around literacy have changed so much in the last 30 years. It's quite phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think having worked here for this long now, I have such a newfound understanding and respect for everything that goes. Reading is not just reading anymore.
Nope.
There are so many subcomponents, so many different avenues and things to look at. So very excited to have our guests with us to talk about that.
Yeah. And, this increase in expectations around literacy and literacy abilities has really increased the independence of people with Down syndrome. And also the expectations in other areas of life. Literacy really opens doors for employment and having social lives and those kind of things. So it's huge.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So today we're really excited to have our first episode with two guests on our panel, and they're both people that we know and love. So we'll be speaking with Eleanor Stewart and Danielle McKinney, both who are teachers at the Down Syndrome Resource Foundation. Eleanor is the Director of Education and Programs and has worked at the DSRF since 2008 as the lead teacher. She is a BC certified teacher who has a master's degree in educational psychology with a specialization in reading and exceptionality from Simon Fraser University in British Columbia and an education degree from McGill University. Eleanor has developed and teaches the adult courses at the DSRF aimed at increased reading fluency as well as social communication and community navigation skills. She has also taught children continues to teach children in the one-to-one reading programs for students ages 3 and up. And beginning in fall of 2015, Eleanor has led a DSRF school collaboration pilot program, which I think is super cool, where she designs one-to-one reading interventions for school-aged children and collaborates with teachers and educational assistants to implement the reading program in a school setting. And our second lovely guest is Danielle McKinney, who graduated from the University of Victoria with a Bachelor of Education in Elementary Education, and a concentration in language arts. So she is currently completing the Inclusive Education Graduate Diploma at Vancouver Island University. I love that our teachers are continuing to learn. It's so cool.
I'm just thinking,
it's just so inspiring.
Busy.
I know, very, very busy. Yeah. So Danielle is also a BC certified teacher and has worked with children in various settings for many years. Since 2011, Danielle has been providing one-to-one instruction in reading and math to learners of all ages at the DSRF, where she's also responsible for curriculum development, liaising with other professionals, families, and school-based teaching teams, and developing and presenting workshops and webinars on reading, math, communication, and engagement for audiences of parents, educators, and support staff. And I've had the pleasure of watching her engagement webinar, and I learned so much. So welcome to the LowDOWN podcast, Eleanor and Danielle.
Thanks for coming, guys.
We're so excited to have you.
Really excited to be here.
Yeah, so we have a tradition at the LowDOWN podcast where we start off by we know you guys quite well, but you might surprise us today. But for our listeners to get to know you a little bit better, we have what are called our 5 secret questions. Okay. And we like the word secret, but it's really just icebreaker questions. So you guys can.
The stress level has gone up, I can tell.
There's no calculation, no testing involved, just so that our listeners can get to know you a little bit better. Okay, so question number 1, and maybe Eleanor, we can start with you first. What is the best caffeinated drink that you've ever had?
Oh, I think I love kind of like a long macchiato.
Oh, very nice.
So a little bit of milk,
approve
some
so
foam.
much.
And I think the best one I ever had was in Italy, obviously.
Of course, yes. Yeah. What about you, Danielle?
Well, I'm not quite as cultured as Eleanor. So I really enjoy a chestnut praline latte.
Very
holiday season.
Yeah.
It's right there on the top of my mind right
Love
now.
it.
So
I've never even heard of that.
Oh, it's delish.
It's like, you're more cultured.
I feel like a chestnut praline latte might be in order after.
Maybe.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Okay. Question number 2, your favorite hike or outdoor walk around like the greater Lower Mainland area. Danielle, why don't you go first on that one?
Most of the hiking or walking that I do with the family is in Golden Ears Park in
It's
Makewood.
so gorgeous.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh,
Love it.
I love Golden Ears. Do you go by the creek?
Gold Creek.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the lazy walk. And then sometimes we'll do
That's
the
not
lower
my
falls.
lazy walk. I love that walk.
It's mostly lazy for the dog. It needs to be carried
yeah.
the whole way
Aw.
back because it's a bit of a trek.
Yeah, and your dog isn't a tiny dog
No.
either. Yeah. Oh my
Well.
goodness. Well, I mean,
Has short legs.
he's not. Yeah, he has short legs. Eleanor, what about you?
I think mine is, it's just in the North Shore. It's called Hyannis Point. You can make it harder. You can keep it easy.
Another stream.
Yeah.
Really nice.
Yeah. And lots of big trees.
Yeah.
That's like a hidden gem. Like a lot of people don't know about that one. I only know because Eleanor told me.
I know.
Is that a hard one
I was
or an easy
hesitant
one?
to mention it.
Well, I'm so glad you trust me.
The
You're
now the
secret.
whole world
now.
knows. Now the whole world knows. Is it an easier walk hike?
Yeah,
or-
you can keep it easy, but if you can extend it, make it
Okay.
more challenging if you're
Yeah.
into that.
And I think for our listeners that are not familiar with BC, we are like a province rich with hikes and just
Very
like
lucky.
never-ending options here. So that's
It's
really
been
great.
good during COVID.
Absolutely, 100%.
The only thing to do.
The only thing to do, yeah. Okay, question number 3. Given that you guys are teachers and reading teachers, and what are you currently reading right now, or a book that you recently read that you really loved? Eleanor, why don't you start us off on that one?
I've been reading a lot of culinary books right now.
Oh.
So I just got Oda Lengi's new book called Flavor. It's
Okay.
all about cooking and preparing vegetables. It's really good.
Nice.
So I'll borrow that
And-
after you.
Yeah.
Yum.
And then beside that is, what's her name? Samin. She wrote Salt, Acid,
Fat
Oh.
heat.
Fat, Heat. Yeah.
Yeah, that
Yep,
sounds
yep.
really
It's really good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cookbooks, love it. Another thing
That's
that
what
a
I'm
lot of
into right
people-
now.
Yeah.
That's all I have time for.
Exactly. Hey,
It
that's a
gives you
great
some
one.
inspiration.
Yeah.
You know, it's nice.
Yeah.
For sure.
Good during
Um,
COVID as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say, yeah. Danielle, what about you?
Well, I don't read a lot when I have too much going on, which is the case right now. So I'm currently reading Assessment and Intervention for Students with Special Needs.
Okay.
But the last book I read for fun, it was From the Ashes.
Yes.
And I think I recommended that to Hannah.
Yeah, it's on my list already. Okay. Gonna go to it next. Yeah.
I wouldn't say it was
Not the happiest.
happy reading,
Yeah.
but it was, yeah.
It was not assessment and intervention
Exactly.
related.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Not a workbook.
Okay, great. So question number 4. What is the most essential accompaniment to apple pie?
Come on, guys.
Yeah.
Eleanor has very strong opinions on this one. Why don't you get us going then?
A piece of cheese. An apple pie without some cheese is like a kiss without a squeeze.
Oh,
my life goals are complete.
Wow.
I really needed Eleanor to say that
I
on the
have
podcast.
never heard that before, and that is...
Did you ask them to ask that question
No,
so that you could say that?
It's like on a platter. I loved it.
An apple pie with a piece of cheese?
Mhm.
Really?
Well, have you ever had apple and cheese together?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Delish.
Interesting. Yeah.
I know you're
Cheese and
cheese-free.
fruit. Yeah, it's
I
delicious.
actually have a recipe for a pie that has jalapeno and cheese in it.
There you go.
Like a fruit
Apple.
pie?
Apple pie, yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
like an old
I'll send
cheddar.
it to you.
Okay, yeah. Do.
Oh. Maybe we'll post it on the webpage.
Yeah.
There might be people very intrigued
Required
about this
resources.
recipe.
It's best of bridge.
Yeah.
Oh,
So would you
sounds
agree
good.
with Eleanor cheese, or are
No.
you more of a traditionalist like me?
Ice cream.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking.
I like whipped cream, but you can't do whipped cream and cheese with pies.
No.
No.
Yeah.
Not
You only need one dairy product.
yeah,
Yeah.
per pie slice. It's true.
It's a lot of rules here.
See, our questions are great, right? All sorts of weird things. Okay, and question number 5: your favorite musician to see live, or maybe we can even say the first person you'd like to see live once COVID is over.
This is going to be an unpopular
Oh,
answer because I
there's
do
no
not
such-
enjoy
Yeah.
live.
That's fine. I know lots of people that don't
Concerts.
enjoy live concerts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Loud.
I don't like crowds.
It's too boring. I'm not like I don't know.
Glenn,
Sitting, I don't mind like a small venue.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Our producer
But not like
Glenn
a
is looking
huge-
at Danielle like, "Are you kidding me?"
Not a
Glenn's
stadium
big concert person.
I'm not doing that.
Like myself. Yeah.
The last one I went to was U2.
Oh, well, there you go. Okay.
No.
And they just turned you off of live music.
no. I just knew it
Just
was
not your thing.
Not my thing.
Okay.
Maybe it needs
that's
something
totally-
more intimate.
Yeah, like
smaller, which was probably going to be the
yeah.
way of the future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So true.
yeah,
Okay.
it's been a long time since I've been to a live.
Would you like to say
Venue.
stand up or something
Yeah.
not
Or
musical?
theater.
Yeah,
The theater.
Musicals.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I miss musicals. Eleanor, what about you?
Wow, there's so many.
I know.
But
You can give me a top 3.
one of my my favorite Arcade Fire is amazing
Mhm.
live.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
there's just so many.
Canadian
but I think
band,
I was
right?
thinking I really have been into this woman called Sharon Von Etten,
Mhm.
and I'd like to see her live
Okay.
because I've never seen her live.
Yeah.
Um,
Great.
Yeah. There you go.
Awesome. Great. Well, that was.
Now our listeners know you.
I learned a lot more about you guys. Some things I knew, and the cheese thing I'm still not sure about. But
Yeah.
I'm not going to knock it until I try it.
Yeah,
So-
exactly.
But thank you for indulging in this fun little activity. So let's kind of get to our topic of the day. My first question for you guys, and you guys, either of you can start off. Do you feel that you are seeing differences between the students you have now and the ones you saw around maybe 10 years ago in terms of literacy?
You want me to start?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, Danielle and I were talking about this topic recently, and I think seeing students now coming out of high school compared to 10 years ago, they're coming out with more literacy skills. And I think you kind of touched upon it in your intro, Marla, that I think families seem to have higher expectations for their child's literacy goals, and they're seeking additional opportunities for literacy learning and kind of advocating more for those academic skills and support earlier. So I think that's been a change. And then Danielle, you were mentioning.
Yeah, well, we've been finding here we do get a lot more younger
Little tots.
students.
Yeah.
Starting really early, like 3 and 4. And yeah, we were just talking too about like kind of where we need to go with it. Is that we're still finding that a lot of the expectations are more around emergent literacy skills, like being able to share a book and reading some sight words and things like that, and just really boosting that to having an expectation for conventional literacy where can be used functionally and
So you're reading to learn more than learning to read. is what
Yeah.
you're
yeah,
That's
just
the
really
longer term
upping the goal to that
past sort of
level.
like sounding words out. Right.
Yeah.
Are you guys finding that schools and educators in the public school system are changing their approaches or are doing anything different as well to make that difference?
I just find it's so much based on school to school, but there's a lot. We've been fortunate to work with a lot of school teams that are really excited and want to learn more and are really into applying strategies and working with us. But
there's definitely a lot of things that need to come into play when you're thinking about providing that literacy support in a school setting. You need to have the opportunity to work one-on-one with the student sometimes, or have the skills and the strategies in the toolbox to pull out when necessary when working also within the larger class setting. So we really kind of one of our goals here is to equip people or educators with those types of strategies that we've found to over time really work with our students.
And think about it, instead of having these like separate literacy blocks, like weaving it in through the day, right? And that's kind of what our students need, is a lot of that repetition and that frequency, and that it doesn't need to be a 45-minute session. It could just be like 10 minutes every day, and you're going to see a lot of improvement just based on that. So kind of reframing. Yeah,
always having that idea of what can I focus on literacy wise in this setting, what we're doing.
Finding those opportunities.
It's a change in expectations away from like learning to read class. Right, where we're gonna spend our hour and then we're not going to think about it for the rest of the day. Towards we're going to have literacy involved in our whole daily process at school and at home. I think
it's more meaningful that way. Also, if you're building it into the routines, more functional for sure. Rather than just being like, let's sit down, read a book, and then we're done. So
I know that comes. I mean, we have learned, or I have learned, anyways. A lot, or I've seen that happening a lot with our SLPs, and how building in opportunities for increasing communication happens.
Ideally all day.
All day in every situation, so that they can generalize that ability across.
And we know that our students have a hard time with generalization as a whole. So that's another reason to not separate it from the rest of life. And, I tell my families, good practice is something that fits with what you already do. And ideally, depending on the challenge, but ideally I don't want you to have to sit down and spend half an hour repeating the same speech sound, because
it's no fun for anybody.
It's not fun for anybody, and it's unlikely to carry over into the next half hour when you're playing. Right.
And it makes it seem like work, right? So like even with some OT skills, I'm like, it doesn't have to be work.
Right.
You can present it in a way where it's more meaningful and fun.
Just
so
part of the day.
And you can take this to any avenue you guys want, but how have expectations around literacy changed? So from your experiences with our parents, maybe even your own expectations, what you've learned?
I think we touched a little bit on that already, just around like wanting to extend our expectations to be more than what, just the basics of literacy are. But also, I think just seeing different examples of kids that are reading, kids with Down syndrome who are reading, have really helped to increase what's in people's minds about what's possible.
Right.
So I think definitely having just higher expectations is helpful.
I think media really affects that too. Like, one of the things that wasn't there 10, 15, 20 years ago was videos that were publicly available of other kids with Down syndrome reading. So you had to, know the person directly to be able to find that information. And now you can find, so-and-so reading a book, and so-and-so, like it's there. And so people know that it's possible in a way that they didn't necessarily before.
True.
Okay, well, let's get into the little nitty-gritty of how learning to read works. So one question or comment that comes up a lot about how these things are taught in school and whether that works for kids with Down syndrome is the process of learning to read different for a kid with Down syndrome? Like, can we, in school, grade K1, 2, we have time that's dedicated in the classroom to learning how to read. Is that enough? Do we need to change it? Where are we at?
Well, I'll start, Danielle, and then you can fill in. The process of learning to read isn't different, because all students need to learn the alphabetic code. But the challenges that come with that for our guys or for students with intellectual disabilities, and specifically Down syndrome, those challenges influence our approach to teaching reading.
Okay.
So when you're talking about having, your 1 hour a day focused on reading, I think our students need more than that. And we know that our students benefit the most and learn the most efficiently when when it's in a one-to-one situation. And I think that becomes a challenge in our school system because there really is this movement of inclusion, which is really important. But I think that there's a lot of confusion, as we say, with inclusion around whether it's, ethical to pull a child out to do one-on-one. But I don't know. I think,
what is it about one-on-one that you think helps our students? Is it a matter of distraction and focus? Is it a matter of the pace of how fast you're kind of covering material? What is it about that one-on-one that works?
I think you nailed both of them. Yeah. I think it's the attention and, that's what Danielle and I always talk about, because that's the biggest challenge for teaching reading, is that you need the child to attend, or you need the student to attend, as with speech and with OT. And I think when you have that one-on-one, you have more ability to engage and motivate and entertain and keep them
entertain being the big one.
And you have control of the pace too.
And personalization is also helpful. But also really, I think having that opportunity to analyze what the errors are, or what what their strengths are in reading, and really be able to provide more direct and explicit instruction based on what you can gain from seeing how they're reading, or what kinds of errors they're making, or just what areas they need a little bit more in, as opposed to
customized.
One size fits all for the whole class.
For sure.
Which I know that most is not necessarily what's happening in classrooms, but it probably is happening a little more than what our students would need. They just need a little bit more of individualized.
And I think Eleanor brought up such a good point too, that I personally agree. I feel that you can, if you're working on I can equate this to printing as well. If you're working on something brand new, like decoding a word to write it out, or figuring out the movements of writing a letter, versus decoding the sound of the letter that makes up even a word as simple as cat. You need your full attention. There's so many different sub-processes working on that.
Yes.
But the thing is that once they're on a roll and getting that, then there's nothing saying that you can't go back in the classroom and continue. But at least when you're initially teaching, it needs to be in an environment that's conducive to giving them
really
all
direct.
the ability to do that, right?
Yeah.
And then you said that then they know what's expected too, right? And it's easier for them to perform that.
And putting the SLP hat on it. Classrooms, it's an SLP OT hat. It's a multicolored hat. Classrooms have a lot of visual and auditory distractions. And even the best, most gorgeously run classrooms have this. It is just part of it. It's part of being in school. And we have had the pleasure of seeing some just phenomenally run classes. But kids are still wiggling. There's noises, the bell's going off, things are happening. For a kid with Down syndrome who has trouble with hearing and processing language and sounds, and you're trying to teach them sounds and how it relates to written symbols on a page, those distractions become just too much. And it's just going to make it take longer and make the process less efficient.
Exactly.
And kind of along those lines of taking longer, that is another thing that our students need, is that, even if the whole year of kindergarten and half of grade 1 is focused on learning to read, they're going to need extra time to gain those foundational skills. And time spent developing those skills is well spent in where it's going to benefit in the future. So moving on and saying, oh, good enough, or, they'll catch up. We need to just spend the time and get those, really foundational skills in. And another thing that we might do is to teach things in a different order, or, spend slightly more time on a certain set of skills than you would need to do with a typically developing reader.
It gives you time to experiment, right? Because of course, not one approach is going to work for every kid.
student.
So it gives you time to mess around with stuff.
And time to sort of compensate for things that are turning out to be difficult.
Yes, exactly.
It's interesting that you say don't move on until you can really move on, because I think there's a misconception about keeping the child with the group and keeping the child doing what the class is doing. And I see the value in that. But when this is a skill that they are going to have and use for the rest of their life, it is worth it to make sure that the foundation is really there and not missing some chunks, because it will not help us later.
No, exactly.
Yeah. Or do you run into that issue, missing foundational chunks in some of our older students? Does that happen?
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's been, we also noticed that there's definitely like an imbalance in some strengths. So it might seem like, oh, this is a really good reader. We can move on. We can give them harder, higher levels or more comprehension and more of this or that. But we see that maybe when you go to focus in on something like spelling, that they are focused there, maybe leaning more towards a visual strength of reading, but they don't have that sound symbol connection. So then the spelling is suffering. But maybe didn't pick up on that because we weren't looking for that, because we were focused so much on the reading portion of it. So just making sure that all those pieces are aligned, or at least kind of moving forward at the same
which is and I always want to also like recognize how many pieces there are to learning to read.
Exactly.
And schools are in especially right now, like it's such a challenging time to try to lead and execute an IEP and make sure all those moving pieces are happening. And I think that's why when we're talking with EAs and teachers, we really try to break it down into these kind of smaller, like just 10 minutes. You don't need to, they're not going to learn all of these things in an hour. Exactly.
So
many moving parts.
Let's talk about that. When we're talking about literacy and a comprehensive literacy program, what are these parts? What do we need? You've mentioned spelling, you've mentioned decoding. Let's talk about what both of those are and the other pieces.
So, usually when we're talking about a comprehensive literacy program, we're talking about 5 components. So, phonological awareness, phonics, comprehension, vocabulary, and fluency.
It's a lot of things.
It's a lot of things. And even within phonics, like you said, there's decoding and there's spelling. So decoding and encoding. So those are 2 different skills within that other, subcomponent there. Skill. So, so we definitely recognize that it might look a little bit different for our learners with Down syndrome, and that each component is very complex, and our learners might require more support to consolidate all of those moving parts. So, one thing we find is that sometimes students who have, are able to decode words are not necessarily comprehending either at the word sentence or short passage level. So that's an area where we might want to kind of hone in for a little while and develop those comprehension skills and just strategies for how do we understand a text, or what kinds of things can we do before moving on. I know there's often a lot of kind of focus on, what's the next level? What level is my child reading at? Can we read harder books? But there's so much we can do once we can process the text and read it to further understand it and really get more from it vocabulary wise, or become more fluent in reading at that level. It's not always pushing forward and trying to get
to the end of the
road,
the numbers or the
one
alphabet
of those areas, when to the detriment of
all the others. So the skills that you're talking about, there's a lot. I mean, there's the 5 major areas. Do they happen in a certain order? Are we addressing them sequentially or simultaneously? My hands are moving, no one can hear it.
Is it helpful to me? Is it like a progression that you follow, or how do you?
It's, I would say, when you talk about a comprehensive reading or literacy program, it's meant to be, all happening kind of at once, and you're incorporating all these skills within every text, and that's why it does require a lot of planning and skill and a good
attention.
But there will be times when you're maybe just starting, increasing the level or reading, words with new phonics patterns, where you're going to spend more time in that phonics section. More time with the decoding and, less time, or maybe spend more time comprehension wise with books that the teacher reads aloud. just to get all those pieces working together. One thing that maybe is like seen as sequential would be that a lot of most kids, or like a good indicator of reading success, is that strong phonological awareness before learning how to read. And one thing that we know with our students is that may develop because of learning to read and not
the other way around.
Before learning to read.
Can you just tell our listeners?
Yeah.
Can you
So
define phonological awareness?
Phonological awareness is the understanding and the ability to manipulate sounds in our language without the presence of text. So you can do it with your eyes closed. So I might say, oh, this is the word cat. What are the 3 sounds in cat? And Hannah would tell me cat. I cannot not use that word as an example.
I know, we always
it's
literally
such a go-to word that I ever pick. Whereas phonics would be attaching that to print.
A symbol.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So we've seen that having the symbol there first and having that connection that our students can concretely understand, that when you see this, you hear this sound, can then help them to be able to hear the sounds within words then without the print, and develop and strengthen their phonological awareness because of it.
I think that in itself is like a gold mine of
That's a gem.
That's such a nugget of information. I'm like, okay, I get it now. Like, it makes so much sense.
It makes sense.
It makes complete sense because our students have auditory processing challenges, right? Where sounds are getting missed, maybe they have hearing loss, etc. And we always say that you need a visual to compensate for what they're not hearing. And in this case, the visual is the written or typed symbol. And just a side note for everyone, I find that students progress the fastest in their speech and language goals when they are also working on reading. And it's for that exact reason, where their awareness of sounds increases so much through this sound letter correspondence and phonics awareness processes that they're able to make faster gains. So if you want to do both things, I recommend, for sure.
Highly recommend.
It's amazing how many people that I've run into, because it's a nerdy question I like to ask, who can read as adults, but can't hear those sounds in words. It's not super strong, and maybe they're not really great readers, but it's not just kind of a given that we can
Not
all
intuitive.
process language in the same kind of way.
That does make sense.
Makes sense.
Yeah, of course there'd be
Have you
variation.
ever met someone who thinks they can rhyme but can't? It's that
And that's
person.
the skill.
Yeah. Oh, it's Eleanor.
Pointing
Thanks
to
for outing me.
or the concept of, like, if you use rhyme as an example, like, it sounds different to one person and they think they legitimately are rhyming, but it's not following like the rhyming rules, right? So I can imagine that.
I'm going to talk about something that's really common for early readers with Down syndrome, that is learning sight words. Now, there's specific programs for this. There's sort of looser approaches to it. What is the deal with sight words? Why do we teach them? Why do we use them? And is it enough to just have them for your learning?
And can you define sight words as well?
Oh, yeah. Let's do that too.
Well, a sight word is a word that you look at and recognize without having to decode it or sound it out.
So you're recognizing the shape of the word as opposed to reading.
I feel like it could be the shape, or it could be I don't know, if you think about when you're reading, you might just look at the first 2 letters, or you may see the first and the last letter, the length. Yeah. You see a pattern. And we've used sight words, like, traditionally and historically was like one of the first ways that they started teaching individuals with Down syndrome to read, because of their relative strength in visual processing and visual memory. And there was like immediate success with that approach. And we use, I guess, to answer your second question, and then I'll come back. But you can't. A person can learn several sight words, but technically they won't be able to read, right? Because it will limit vocabulary. And just when they're presented with a novel word, they won't have the skills or strategies to decode that word. So that's why we don't only do sight words here, but we start with sight words. And we begin teaching sight words, but not those kind of typical, in the school system, there's like the dolch words, there's the high frequency words and fry words. Yeah. So these are, and those are, a lot of those words are words that you can't really sound out. You have to kind of memorize them. And that's why they're taught through a sight word approach. But we begin with high meaning sight words. So these are words that have high meaning and high motivational value to our students. And we use those because it's, when we went back to that idea of attention and motivation, our learners really need support with maintaining motivation and maintaining attention. And if we start with words that they want to learn, like Paw Patrol, Chase on the Case, and popcorn and French fries. And Mom and Dad,
siblings, you're really using their interests as a way to get them motivated.
Right, and that's really motivating. And then that addresses that piece, and at the same time, it starts to teach that important concept of reading, that print carries meaning, right? And that's a concept that, again, learners with Down syndrome have. We know that kids with intellectual disabilities have challenges learning a lot of these concepts that we take for granted, right? So it's a good way to really teach that early concept of print.
Yeah, that reading has a purpose, and here's what it is. You can read mommy's name on the hook.
Paper.
Exactly.
Yeah. I like that reading has a purpose, because I think sometimes it's presented as a way of just like, well, you just do it.
This is what we do.
This is what we do. Like it actually,
You can read about Peppa Pig and enjoy it.
Yes, exactly.
And it can be something fun. And I think even the little skill of noticing print around you in the environment comes from understanding that means something, and it's worth paying attention to. So make it fun with French fries and Peppa. For sure.
I had a parent call me up specifically to tell me that they were walking down the street and her son saw a sign and said pizza. And you're like the most exciting thing of the day.
That is so cool.
Yeah, because that was something he was really interested in. And so we worked a lot on learning how to read pizza
and that generalization.
And the generalization, exactly.
So
without being prompted to like, what does that sign say? Just out of the blue, say pizza.
That happened last week to me too, Danielle. That a mom emailed me and said they were playing Heads Up or Headbands. And the name was Ariana Grande, and my student read Ariana Grande, and they're like, I love it. But is that generalization?
Yeah.
And then, of course, the child is super motivated because, everyone's excited and they are identifying things that are important to them.
I really hope that boy got pizza.
I was just going to say, just like, exactly.
Okay. So let's talk about one way that sight words and other aspects of reading can be taught, which is the match, select, name method. Sometimes it's called the old win method too. What is this, and why do we make solid use of it?
All right. So this method or this approach was developed by Patricia Olwyn, who was a teacher of young students with Down syndrome. She just kind of tried it out one day, and it really worked. And so she developed the method, and there's a book. I always forget the title because it's like
teaching kids with Down syndrome to read.
We'll link it in the notes, right?
For sure. Totally will. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
So basically, it involves 3 steps: matching, selecting, and naming. So matching, you would have a piece of paper with the 4, or if you're just beginning, maybe 2 words that you're trying to teach the child to read, and the same words on individual kind of flashcards. So you would say the word, they would match it to the same word on the grid. Hopefully repeat it after you as well to get that other input.
You're not requiring them to say it at this point.
No, they don't have to say it. It's helpful to have both kind of modalities working at the same time, but they can just look at it and match it to the same. So that's kind of the simplest part of the process. And this is the idea that we're scaffolding and we're teaching the words, not just flashing words in some kind of magical way they're going to learn these words.
Right.
So we're first teaching them by matching, and then the next step would be to select the words. So this would be on your verbal cue. So as the teacher, I would say, I'm not going to say cat. I'm going to say
Dog.
Pizza. So I would say pizza, and the student would have their word cards in front of them, and then they would either hand me the word card or point to it. Another aspect of this approach is that airless learning. So, if they're not immediately going for the word pizza, then I'm going to indicate to them that that's the word that they need to select. And this is the teaching part of it. It's not the testing or the
It's not a quiz.
Yeah, it's not a quiz. We're learning these words right now. It's okay that I need to support and help you define that. And then that brings us to the final stage, which would be naming that word or identifying that word. So just showing them the card and then being able to read it. So this really uses, as Eleanor I think mentioned a couple times here already, that visual strength that our learners with Down syndrome have.
And match select name is something you would say is taught in that sequence, right? Like, I mean, I know the 5 components of comprehensive reading can be mix and match, but with match select name, would you recommend that we kind of go in that sequence?
Yeah, so this would be specifically for sight words, which it's kind of weaves its way into all of those components of reading. So it can help if you're learning sight words, it can help with your fluency. It can help with comprehension. If you automatically know some of these words, it's going to make your reading less effortful and you're better able to focus on comprehension. So it's also going to help, it's not phonics, but it allows you to not have to decode every single word. So you can focus on, reading in phonetically for the words that you don't know.
For sure.
So yeah, it's definitely a thing. But as far as the approach goes, yes, we want to go from simple to more complex. So in a really early reader or with a beginner reader, we might just do a lot of matching. But ideally, we want to do all 3 stages. So even if they're just learning the words and are not able to name it on their own, you can still show them the card and say, this is pizza. And they can repeat pizza after you so they understand, again, what that process is. And so they can eventually move to independence.
Do you ever do individual sounds with the same method?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it can be used, because I know Hannah uses the same method for learning things like colors. And I use the same method sometimes too. So it's flexible, but not. So the order is essential, but what you put on there is maybe a little bit more flexible.
Yeah, if it works to teach whatever skill you're teaching, that's great. It's really just an idea of scaffolding.
Yeah, it works beautifully with shapes too.
But
it's also really good for students who have complex communication needs, right? So, or they're at a stage where they're just signing, because it doesn't require
verbal speech.
You actually don't have to say anything. So we should clarify that. At the naming stage, if somebody has an AAC device, like an iPad or something like that, finding the word on the device counts as saying the word.
Yes.
Right?
Or
signing the word counts as saying the word. Or even indicating something in the room that is the word that you're talking about counts as, yes, I understand that this is what this is.
What that says. It could also pick, like you could have 3 pictures on the table and show them the word pizza and they have to find pizza.
Exactly.
As opposed to pie and cake. Right?
So we're not needing to wait for the verbal skills to be there.
And lots of times it will help to
get those verbal skills there.
Exactly. And I think the systematic approach works really well for some of our students that have maybe that additional diagnosis of autism and need something very like a systematic, structured way of doing things. I found when I teach colors or shapes or something else, using the match select name, it works really well for that particular group of kids because it's like expected. They know what they need to do, and it's just like go step by step. So
and you can going back to pace too. You can really adjust the pace if it is a student who
is going to cruise. And on the other side of things too, I have had, a couple of students where we've been working on the concept of same and different, also known as matching, for like a year, right? Where we're really focusing in because it's a fundamental skill. If you think about choosing from a selection of items or words or whatever, you have to be able to know that what you're choosing is the one that you want. So sometimes it just takes a long time, and that's okay too.
The other thing about having this kind of routine thing is it takes away that additional step of explaining what we're going to do in this new activity.
Reduces that verbal input, right?
Right?
So true.
They know. We bring out the grid, we bring out the cards, we're going to learn our words. It can be on their visual schedule as learn words.
And Yeah, exactly. I love that idea.
It's so true. And you guys do it. I mean, it's not always just point to it kind of a thing. I've seen you guys do lots of fun stuff with match select name. So you can incorporate the students' interests. I've seen magic wands. I've seen fly swatters. I know you guys are having too much fun.
Puppets, mailboxes.
Puppets, you know, selecting can do a lot of things.
That's a lot of options.
Bowling.
And it's one of those things where the one-on-one teaching aspect of it, you can see how that fits so well, right? Because it's unlikely you're going to get the whole class doing magic wand, match select name together. But certainly in a one-on-one situation, we can keep motivation high and attention really with you. Exactly. It works really well.
But also it's handy to know, you know, if you do get that chance to do the one-on-one and find a strategy, whether it's the magic wand or the puppet that really works, you can bring that into other things.
Yes,
that maybe are within the whole class. And you're like, oh, well, let's do the same thing as everyone else, but we're going to use our magic wand. And it just makes it so much more appealing.
Makes it fun for everyone. And for our listeners that are like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. How do I do it? We'll put this in our episode page, but I just want to mention it now because it's the right time to mention. We have some amazing reading instruction videos on the match select name method on our website for free. I sometimes will go and rewatch them to relearn some stuff if I'm working on printing things, but please definitely we'll put a link on our episode webpage, but
you can find those there.
It's great.
Yeah. Resource. And it is helpful to like really see how this all works too, for sure. Let's talk a little bit about the difference between decoding and comprehension. Danielle, you had mentioned earlier that sometimes, and I see this a lot, we will have a student who, quote unquote, well, they decode a whole page or a whole book of text. Can they tell you what it was about? Not necessarily. So why does that happen? Let's dive into that.
Yeah. Well, again, there was a lot going on.
Reading is hard.
I mean, it was kind of an eye-opener for me the first time I kind of considered that, maybe they don't understand what the question means, like what the word where
it's always where
means. It's always where.
It's always where.
It's often when.
I spend a lot of my job is where and when.
Where and when. I find the where I don't know, it kind of always amuses me because I say, where is the pig? Right there, like on the page. Not true. In the mud or in the barn, but on the page.
And you see it.
Okay, so we need to work on where. So just that idea that there's so many things that have to kind of be underlined before they can even begin to comprehend a whole page of text. And so starting at the word level, just making sure that they understand the vocabulary and then being able to understand, simple sentences, understand what a question is and what those question words mean. But also while you're reading, what are you doing? Are you asking yourself questions? Are you just spitting out words? Are you pausing? Are you
thinking about it?
I wonder, or, predicting so many strategies and, where do we start?
Do you think it has something to do with how the mechanics of reading, so the decoding is difficult for a lot of our students. And so a lot of their mental energy is focused on just getting those words to sound quote unquote right. There's not mental space left over for thinking about the text.
Exactly.
And that's what we often recommend is that when you're working on comprehension, you choose a reading level that's a bit below their ability, their accuracy level, their decoding level. And then that reduces that cognitive load that you're talking about, right? And so instead of focusing on decoding these words, they have a bit more room to work on some of these other skills. And
or read alouds too.
Exactly.
Just going to talk about that. Would you say there's benefit in? I mean, I think I know the answer, but let's talk about covering a text more than once for the purpose of comprehension.
Yes. Repeated readings
are all about it.
Gold star in our
gold star. But this is super interesting though, because a lot of people think you read it once, you're done, you move to the next book.
Right.
And you're saying, no. How many times are we talking here? How many times do we reread and reuse our text?
I mean, with us in our sessions, because we only have, the opportunity to see our students once a week, I think we would definitely be using it at least 2 or 3 times with the same text. And even then keeping it kind of on the back burner as a review or as a choice, even if, we're doing a new book to work on new words or new concepts, we can still pull that in for other reasons, like fluency
Mm-hmm.
practice or comprehension or you know, those kinds of things.
The repetition is really important.
Really important. And it's important for their success too. It really provides them with that opportunity to be successful with something they've seen before. And just the idea that there's so many things you can do with one book. You know, you can, in a classroom, you could have a book that spreads over the whole week, you know, where the first one is don't even open it. You're just looking at pictures and you're talking about what it could be about. Or, you know, here's some vocab that we need to think about, or can you find these in your AAC device? You know, those kinds of things can happen before you even start to read the story. So for sure, you're going to need more than one exposure to it.
And it just allows our students to be more confident. We want them to feel like, oh, I've seen this before. I can handle this. I'm good at this. That's something we always want to see.
And then just slowly layering on some new skills and some new strategies that they can use with that.
And I think the other piece with comprehension is that you're integrating 2 or more skills, right? When you're trying to comprehend. And when we do our reading presentations, I always talk about, you know, if you kind of think about a text that you've had to read that maybe you didn't have any background knowledge on. So I always use the example of like a manual around like automatic transmissions in a car. I have no background knowledge on that whatsoever, which means I probably have reduced understanding of the vocabulary and I can't make any connections to that text.
And it's written in a way that's meant for people that are
used to that text form. Exactly. And so A, I'm not going to be motivated to read that, and B, I will probably have to read it a few times, and C, I probably won't understand it. So I'm going to have to ask.
Go back and forth and reference.
Right.
And like you can even really simplify it. Like let's think about IKEA assembly instructions. You don't look at it one time and then assemble the thing. At least I don't. Man, I'm looking at every step. I'm like, what is that angle?
But each subsequent one, you get better at it, right?
You get better at it, but then you refer back and forth. You know, it's not I wish it was a look once and be done, but it's so not.
And you have that cognitive strategy, right? To know that, okay, I can go back and read the text, or I can go reference this, or I can go ask this person, or
I have a different strategy for IKEA instructions. I
Call
don't
someone?
look at them. I try to build it. I call my husband.
He might look at them.
He totally does it. And also grumbles a little bit. So
or you could include another strategy is like look it up on YouTube first.
Because
sometimes I do that. I'm like, that visual representation is so much easier than the 2D of a picture.
And we can make the comparison with the books and texts that our students are reading, where, you know, if I'm introducing some kind of new concept, we look it up first. We Google that. We see what the pictures look like. We see if we can find a video about it. Just to make the vocabulary salient and all of those aspects. Absolutely.
Are there some like things that you notice in books that you use with your students that are like, you're like, I wish they had written the book this way, or I wish they had changed the form this way, that would really work well for our students with Down syndrome? Like, I mean, visuals, of course, we know, but like, do you see some things occurring commonly with books that...
I definitely think there's some books that kind of lend themselves more to certain strategies than other books. So it is important to kind of be purposeful in choosing which book you're using to work on whatever the skill or strategy that you're working on. So some books are very sequential. You know, Three Little Pigs. If you're working on going in order, that's a great book to choose, or another book like that. Characters, you want to choose a book that has lots of characters and also a lot of different characters. Like which character was funny, which character was shy. You know, you want to really think about and have a plan before you start reading.
And I guess these are the things you think about when you're customizing books for your students, because I know you guys do a lot of customization of materials. But if you're making a book about Peppa Pig eating pizza with Chase from Paw Patrol, you know, but then you can target like, okay, we're working on this skill, so I'm going to make a book that kind of helps hone that skill.
Exactly. So at that early level, we're probably starting off like with more simple, and then we want to bring in some words that we know that they know from other books or other times that we've taught them, and integrate them into a new context. So that would be an example of that.
But it's true, you do need to kind of keep an inventory of certain books that work, which I'm sure you guys do in your practice, right? Where you know, this book's really good example of a problem and a solution.
Yeah.
And I think that's always what I want. I want like a clean problem and a clean solution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No gray area.
No partial remedies.
Yeah,
please.
That's a really good example. We've actually had to write a lot of our own problem solutions because it's often not super clear. I'll go and read it and be like, I don't know what they're going to do to solve this problem.
Like I would
There's no way that my student can predict what might happen here.
No,
exactly.
Yeah.
For families who are listening at home and maybe don't have access to YouTube, what kind of activities would be a good fit for some of these early literacy skills? I mean, we've talked a little bit about noticing print around you. What else can families do at home to really set the stage, if you will, for later literacy?
I think the biggest thing is that shared interactive reading and making it fun and not turning it into a quiz or a test. Just like, just cuddle up and read and have fun so that they really enjoy reading and they, have positive positive memories associated with it and feelings associated with it.
Yeah.
And reading, we should emphasize, goes past just saying the words that are on the page.
Yes.
Just going to say.
Take it away, Danielle.
Yeah, you
tell us all about it.
That book is yours now. You've purchased it. The author is done with the writing. You can do what you want with it. You can read all the words. You can read none of the words. You can make up your own words. Whatever is, kind of at the level and interest of your child is where you want to be with that, right? We've actually had, some instances of students picking a book that they really are drawn to and want to read, but it's just way above the level of even understanding, having it read to them and understood. So we'll just, open up a page and make up our own sentences with the students.
Sure.
What do you see? And it all of a sudden becomes an I see book. So, all those things are, have at it, like whatever you can do to get your student or your child engaged with a book that's of interest to them is.
It's also good for parents too. Like we've had parents who like, I can't read Brown Bear another day or I'm going to lose my mind. And I think, parents need that flexibility and that freedom to say like, okay, we're going to, do
something different today.
Yeah.
Totally.
There's a lot of different things.
Let's talk a little second about questioning versus commenting. Because I think a lot of families are they want to know what their kid knows. And I get that. I understand that because I have the same impulse with my own kid where I'm like, I wonder if he knows this. I wonder if he knows that. And my temptation is to quiz him on things. This is a no-no. Tell us why.
Well, I think we mentioned it too already with the match select name in that idea of like, are we testing right now? Like maybe there's a time and a place for sure. Kind of draw out what our child does know, but are we testing or are we teaching? So commenting is kind of more that teaching area, right? Where we're showing our child how to notice things in the book or like how things relate to each other. And that just doesn't come inherently just because you opened the book and read a few words, right? You need to go through the process of what you're doing to notice things and what you're doing to put ideas together. So just thinking about what am I doing? What's my purpose? Am I testing or am I teaching?
And you can prompt and you can get a lot of information without asking questions. And, we'll post it actually. We'll share. There's a whole approach to interactive reading called Dialogic Reading. And within that, the whole purpose of that was to provide parents with a variety of prompts that you can use with your child so that you're not always asking the WH question words, right? And
which are one of them.
Yeah, that is
the ways.
Definitely a prompt. But but you don't always, there's other ways to get your child to express themselves or share.
And the same thing with comprehension strategies is that different books kind of lend themselves to different prompts. So that Brown Bear book that we have read too many times, is great for completion, right? So like Brown Bear, what do you? And that student can fill in that word or fill in the animal that they see on the next page. But, it might not be the greatest book to work on
problem and solution.
Yeah.
It's one of those ones. No problems here in the zoo.
Yeah. Probably it gets read a lot because it is kind of good for all of the kinds of prompts that you can do, like as far as like completion and recall and what Eleanor was mentioning that we'll post. But yeah.
I use that one a lot for vocalizing. So, I mean, there's lots of ways you can use a book, and we make sounds when I read it with kids. We practice, all the kinds of things that animals can do, which is related to their speech goals. But we don't need the words to be there, really. It's just the routine of it. So for those people who are listening, Hannah and I work in the same building as Eleanor and Danielle, and we see lots of cool things coming out of their department. So many. And things that look like they take a lot of time. So many custom materials. Why? We've kind of touched on it or kind of walked around the subject, but why are we customizing so many things for these early readers?
Well, again, I feel like a broken record. We're just it's that motivation piece. We know that our learners they don't have the huge strength and intrinsic motivation. So we need to be there for them and kind of boost that motivation. So if we can increase that motivation and get them engaged in learning, then that's going to make the whole experience pleasurable, and it's going to increase the likelihood that they come back and want to come back to reading class and want to share their book with their friends and read it to their mom and show their teacher and do it in different contexts.
Can you give us some examples also of some fun things? Because I think our listeners need to know about like some of the books you've made.
I feel like it's all been, because everything's virtual right now. It's all been these like PowerPoint stuff. But
potato book. Okay. Yes, I have a little guy who really likes potatoes.
Who doesn't?
Most versatile vegetable.
So there was books around what do you want to eat or what should we cook on the stove, and potato was always an option. Potatoes came in big in math. We did a lot of counting potatoes, adding potatoes together to eat, subtracting potatoes that you have eaten.
But he was motivated.
He was motivated.
So,
Danielle and I share a client where a long time ago when she was seeing this client for reading, he's a big fan of princesses and long hair and I love our students' interests are just so great. I learn so much from them as well. But she made a book using I think it was his picture on the pages, and then his mom, and used yarn as different wigs of hair that you could. It was just spectacular.
And so he had to choose. He was learning color words, so he had to choose the word for the color, and then if he wanted a pink wig, he had to find the word that said pink, put it in the sentence, and then he got to put the pink wig on himself or on his mom. And he was also. So that's a good example of review too, because he had previously learned his family name. So now he's reading Mom has a pink wig. So kind of incorporating new words with things he's already, layering.
Yes.
And it's a little bit fun to make things very customized.
You don't know what you're going to see on a photocopy or a DSR. It's like, who is into, Lego today?
I think it's funny because we often know. We're like,
we
this is for this person.
Yeah, exactly. We can kind of tell.
We know.
And honestly, the customization thing is across the board. I mean, I know as SLPs and for sure as OTs. Eleanor, you had mentioned that now that everything is a bit virtual, just considering we're kind of on that trend right now, how have you found teaching reading, either of you, change? What are some of the difficulties, the benefits of doing it online versus in person? Obviously, it will be harder online.
I found the younger students a bit more challenging. I find it's more successful, and I know you guys are saying this too, that it's easier to engage them when you're when you're not sharing a screen or not showing a book online. So I found just being able to read a story and, you can do peekaboo and just or showing pictures and flashcards that way has worked more, has been more efficient and effective for our younger guys. But a lot of our older students, or even just school age and kind of preteens, it's been really successful. They really enjoy having, they have a bit of autonomy, right, and control when you share the remote, and they get to open up
it's
boxes.
very much what their peers are doing. I think that's the
Exactly.
thing, right? Everybody's
Yeah.
online learning and they know it.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
Get to type
That's a good
and-
point.
Yeah, it is novel still. Even though
Yeah.
it's been 8-9
not for
months.
us, but it
Not
is
for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's been great. For us too, just to kind of expand our own repertoire of kind of strategy or skills that are
Danielle's
activities
like
that
a
we can
PowerPoint queen now.
Yeah.
She can animate
She
anything.
really is, yeah. The transition animation stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
And it's great because then you can, it's been cool to kind of implement a lot of those aspects of motivation, like surprise elements and cause and effect. And
there's something
choice.
like online reading games and things that you guys can kind of do as well.
Yeah.
So,
That actually kind of answers that question too, though, about customization, because I do find it a little bit harder to just grab ready-made stuff and be like, this is perfect for my students. So even that, like I might take an idea or, the words that are in that activity, but have to put a bit of a different spin on it or, just slightly modify it to fit the needs, which I guess is not new news, but.
No, but
For sure. Definitely.
Yeah.
And I make a lot of use of a lot of the online book websites have word list options.
Yeah.
So I might use their pictures and do something completely different with it. But at least the pictures are there and they might be in order and at least it's the same person.
Yeah.
If there's a character or whatever.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But I rarely get to use something that's fully made.
Yeah. I mean, it, like we talked about before, because you can do whatever you want with the book. It doesn't have to be, the online options do offer a lot more opportunity for having the students select what they, I have had it backfire where they'll choose a book and I'm like, I just can't, it's like a graphic novel. Looks like a superhero book, but like, no, this is not going to work for us. But overall, if they say, I want a book about monkeys, you can just
here's
check that in. You can kind of pick a book and you can do
whatever you need with it.
Great.
Do you have thoughts on the age at which kids with Down syndrome should begin formal education? Like, is younger better?
So we've worked with kids as young as 3 here, but lots of times that looks more like beginning with following routines and enjoying books together, exposure to letters and letter sounds, understanding the purpose of reading again, like what are we here for? What are we doing here? And just really doing a lot of those repeated readings and, same thing in different ways, just to get them used to what reading instruction is all about, and then moving into, kind of more formal instruction.
That's really the same thing that we do with a 3-year-old, where
pretty
we're
much,
working on either therapy readiness as a broad concept or table readiness, some of those kind of things. With the really little tots.
Just exposing at the basic, like even just like, let's just look at a book together.
Yes.
Like we don't have to do anything.
Getting them to follow a routine.
One thing that we found really successful with that age is I don't know if we got this from somewhere, if we coined this term ourselves, but read and do. So we'll have a short phrase or even just, 2 words. I'm working with a little girl right now and there's a lot of baby play. And so it's like feed baby, baby wash. And so she's learning to see the word baby every time. And every time we do that, we do the action that matches it. So she's seeing this
awesome.
comprehension piece
Beautiful.
right at
so
the very
cool.
beginning stage.
Yeah.
But it depends on the child too, definitely. But
Right.
I feel like there's not a lot of like direct reading instruction. Actually.
Not the sit down.
Getting ready for.
Do it.
And the beauty of this center is that we have this multidisciplinary approach, right? Where we have a student who might want to do reading, but will kind of assess and say, oh, let's try, speech therapy first, and then they can give some recommendations around.
Go see Marla first.
Then come back.
I often send people to you guys first. Well, not necessarily first, but if we're having a lot of, in particular, speech challenges, and the family's interested in doing reading, I highly recommend that they do both.
Yeah.
Or take a break from speech and do reading for a while instead. It's a different door to the same room.
So connected, but also like some different
different
avenues to come at it. Right?
Or like even sometimes if we're sharing clients, like Danielle and I shared a client where I'm just like, okay, what is he reading right now? So you gave me Pete the Cat sentences. We're like, oh, we can practice printing Pete the Cat sentences, but then you can read them for him too.
Yeah.
Very sneaky.
Boom.
Yeah. So, we like to work on each other's goals to some degree. I think it's kind of cool to put everything together.
Yeah.
Parents often notice a big change in their kids from one school year to the next, especially if they are changing schools. Essentially, what they learned in the previous year is gone by next fall, unfortunately. So sometimes this is called the summer slip or the summer slide. Why does this happen, and is this preventable? Tell us.
Yeah, well, I think we've touched on this a bit. We know our students need lots of opportunities for repetition and review and getting to that stage of generalizing knowledge and skills. It requires a lot more effort for our guys. And so, taking that time away is going to likely affect that learning and that retention. I think just kind of thinking about generalization and so that families can use that time, not to focus on reviewing, but using those skills, like what we were talking about, in different ways, in different contexts, keeping it fun still, like it's not sitting down and doing worksheets and reviewing your times tables, but it's,
because a break is good for consolidation as well, but you still need to work on the skills to consolidate, right? You have to apply the skill to do it. So it doesn't mean don't do anything. Yeah. Just look exactly what you said.
Just might look a little different.
Exactly.
And that's the same for us, right? Like,
absolutely. Yeah. 100%. Yes.
There's a lot of skills that I've lost, but because I never did anything with them, right?
Exactly.
French.
Oh, really?
But I think that's relatable for a lot of people, right? Those language courses you took in middle school, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, it's a use it or lose it situation.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that being said, like, I think a lot of parents do get really worried or concerned, but it does come back. Like,
that's the thing. Yeah. And I think that's one thing that I kind of talked to a lot of our parents about when the school shut down at the beginning of the pandemic. I'm like, have faith that it will come back. You can even or when we talk about taking breaks between therapy or teaching blocks, okay, take a break. And then I often, most of the time I find when students come back, it's there and sometimes built so strong and better that you're just like, oh, well, forget that. Let's move on to the next level. So there is benefits to it.
Yeah. I think it's also good to take a little bit of the stress away of always worrying about hitting that next benchmark. Right? You're not behind, we're just doing this maybe at a little bit of a different pace right now because of situations or, circumstances that are going on. But, maybe next month we'll have all this time and we'll be able to really focus in on that. And then we'll, life is just happens.
You always put things on the back burner and come back to them later, right?
But just having that idea in the back of your mind of what the goals are and how you can fit them in whenever it's,
makes
practical
sense.
and reasonable for you.
And you're going to have these peaks and bursts of development and then growth and then valleys of
that is life, right?
Plateaus. Yeah, exactly. It's not linear.
I mentioned in your bio, Eleanor, that you have created our adult classes and you both are working one-to-one with adults for math and reading. It would be great if you could tell our listeners that are not familiar with our adult program, reading and communication program, what the purpose of that was or is, but why is continued reading instruction important for adults with Down syndrome?
I was just thinking about that class too, because you both were you're both
yes, we were both your teaching assistants at one point. You're right. Yeah.
Good old days.
Yeah, a long time.
So our adult class is called Reading and Communication Plus because we do a little bit of math, some social skills and stuff. But it was designed after we'd worked with some educators in Australia who were doing research with young adults with Down syndrome and literacy skills. And what the research found was that once the adults were out of high school, so around 17, 18-year-olds, they had, and if they were able to continue their literacy, they saw this other growth in terms of literacy skills. So, and that makes sense if you think about if our students are developmentally delayed, if they have that extra time to continue their learning, and also the way we framed it too was putting it into a 2-year program, so they had that extra time to really to really work on it. And what we noticed too was our adults coming into that program, because unfortunately in BC there's not a lot of options for that transition period of coming out of high school. There's not a lot of options for academic options or anything really.
Social, there's not.
It could be more robust, as we like to say. Anyway, my point was that one of the, and you guys can comment on this too, but one thing I really noticed was just students' confidence. Like they were coming out of high school and then they were in this community among other young adults that were very similar to them, and they're able to choose and have more autonomy around what they could read. They had influence and on what themes we talked about, what we did in class, and then you just saw this kind of, they're just more motivated, more confidence, and then you just saw them kind of blossom and kind of want to read more and
I
think
that's key.
Choose the books that they wanted to read, and just it's cool to see. And we're still, I don't teach it anymore, but our other teacher is running it, and you see the same thing, especially in that first 6 months when they start. The group.
And I think the fact that it's a 2-year program is kind of cool, because you can see, the first year, and then because you guys do assessments, at the beginning or at the end of the year, so you really can gauge the progress, like more on paper, but also in person in terms of
that was the big thing with the assessment, because you really didn't catch much after 1 year.
Yeah. And it is really interesting too. I think that the peers aspect is huge because here, in the Lower Mainland, we have a lot of students with Down syndrome. They do not necessarily go to the same school.
No.
So they might be the only person with Down syndrome in their school and the only person who's reading at a comparable level, right?
Yeah.
But once everybody comes here, maybe not everybody's covering exactly the same sort of reading levels, but everybody is somewhere close-ish on the process of reading. And, it's motivating to be around people who are doing the same thing as you, which is really nice.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just a lot of kind of benefits of continuing to learn, as it is true for all of us, but, just continuing to increase knowledge and understanding of even like the current events and things that they can then participate with their peers or with family in conversations. Continuing to explore a wider range of interests, because we find that too, like our students might get kind of set on one idea. So if they have their peers to kind of bounce things off of and see what other people are interested in, it might help them to widen that range of interests and all the benefits of reading. Like developing their vocabulary, interacting with others.
Just for overall independence. Like, I know that when you guys started the reading and communication program, a lot of it was to help transition them into finding jobs, meaningful employment, even living independently. Literacy is everywhere, so you need a solid foundation for it so that you can be more independent, right? So
And I think our students are aware at the high school age that people are going somewhere after high school.
Exactly.
The typically developing peers are doing something. And our students want to feel like they're doing something after high school. And it's certainly better for their mental health. We won't even get into that today. But
they're fully capable of doing things too. It's just you just have to have the right pathway. But if you just have a drop off right after high school, then you're
it's
stuck
devastating.
and you're losing yourself.
Absolutely.
Okay, my last question for you guys is, if you could give our parents or educators listening just your top 3 pieces for motivating or encouraging their kids to read.
It could be more, Danielle.
It could be
Danielle
more.
looks sad.
Absolutely.
She's like, I have lots.
You can add more if you want, but I just want parents to take 3 things away from. There's so much you guys gave us, but they're like, all right, I'm going to try this again. Pick up that brown bear book. I'm going to give it another go. What can they do?
I don't know. I feel like I'd have to categorize. Like for younger,
Sure, categorize away.
We'll do the youngies,
Absolutely.
youngins first.
Do it. Yeah.
Go, Danielle.
Thanks. Well, I think that kind of covers a wide range of tips. Is that just to follow your child's lead and to really be kind of like receptive to what they're doing and how they're reacting to whatever the session, the situation is that the learning situation. And follow their lead as far as interests go, as far as level, as far as, how much or how little reading gets done in a day, a week, a month, a time. And then, kind of spreading that out is fine.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That makes sense.
And that's a super good point. I thought of it earlier and then forgot. But when we are working on a skill with our students, we're always thinking very long term. And is what we're doing right now going to make it more likely that they want to do this with me the next time or less likely? And it is not worth it to push that extra 10% and get the kid to dislike you or not want to do that ever again. It's just not worth it.
Exactly.
Better to hang back, even if you really want to push, just don't.
Yeah.
And I would add on to that to really, when you are following their lead, to kind of use that language where you're calling them a reader. You're commenting on, oh, look at you reading that book. And really being specific about and giving that positive, specific feedback. Like, oh, I loved how you turned the page. That was so good. Oh, look at you pointing at that word. And just all like that's just so crucial at that stage too, for them to feel confident, because it's so easy for them once they get into the school system to lose that immediately.
And it also reinforces what they should be doing to be a successful reader. Right?
Yeah.
Love it. Follow your child's lead. I know you mentioned make it fun. I think that's always...
Sing lots of songs.
Sing lots of songs. Make it fun. Yeah.
And then I would say for the older students, so I really enjoy working with the teenagers. And I think that's kind of a challenging time for parents, because at that point, the teenagers don't really want to read at nighttime with
The bedtime story thing is not really a thing.
You kind of have to be... You need to find those kind of workarounds or those ways to kind of get in there and read with them without them realizing that you're right.
No, absolutely. 100%.
And I think that's easy to do when it kind of goes back to what you were saying, Danielle's like following their lead and their interests. And I think, I'm going to say it, I think Google and using the internet is a really good way to connect with your teenager and do literacy activities.
For sure.
It gives them autonomy. They can, do the search or look up images. And then that's such a good stepping point or send off into another literacy activity. So if they've looked up Ariana Grande, then, I don't know, copy and paste that image of Ariana Grande, put it in a PowerPoint, and then you're making a sentence about it. And then boom, they just read.
You're just making your own book.
4 sentences about Ariana Grande. And they didn't even realize they're doing interactive shared reading with you.
And I think with any age that kind of comes out in these R2 descriptions, there is just the idea of kind of knowing what skills are possible to be working on, and then kind of using a different lens with whatever you're doing, and figuring out how you can kind of fit that in there, right? Because like I think Hannah mentioned in the beginning, there's reading, and then there's like all these other things that are to do with reading. And you might say, the only thing I can do on Google is read about Ariana Grande. But no, we could find 2 pictures of her and have a lesson on fact and opinion. Like, what do you see? Those are facts. She is wearing boots. She does have red hair. What do you think about it? So these are all things that are not necessarily what your teenager is going to see as, we're reading.
Exactly.
Right.
But, they are weaving in those skills that are going to be useful.
Yeah. I love it.
I really like all the things to do with foods. We have a lot of students who really like foods. That's a huge jumping off point, right? You can compare them. You can imagine the one that you would want to make. You can write a whole
what
book
you like,
about
what you don't
how
like.
you would do that.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
you know,
Who would eat it, who you'd eat it with.
all of those things.
Yeah.
I'm sharing my taco book with you guys.
Yes.
Right? See?
Book about tacos, yes. Those are great. I think that's going to give our parents and educators, whoever's listening, just a bit of like an idea and a push to be like, okay, it can be done. You just have to kind of be more creative, think outside the box, and
Think outside the book.
think outside the book.
Oh, I
Don't
like
judge a book by its cover. Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
The name of our next program.
Edit.
How many more book puns can we throw in here?
Yeah.
We did a good job with another episode with our colleague Riley, where we had lots of feeding puns at the end.
Nice.
Yeah, we did.
All right, so you guys, thank you so much. So before we go, we talked a lot about resources, and we'll put the videos on the webpage. We'll put Patricia Owen's book link. Are there any other websites, especially since you're mentioning how to engage teenagers in online reading, that you'd like to recommend?
Well, there's our website. We have lots of videos that Hannah mentioned
Really do.
already. And then at the beginning of the pandemic, we put up a lot of content around just kinds of things you can do at home that touch on each of the components of literacy.
That's our Learn at Home section.
Learn at Home section. And then Eleanor and I were discussing which ones we would share today. And one thing, just, you know, if you're just looking for quick information about a certain reading strategy or approach, Reading Rockets is a good website. Just, it's very comprehensive. Usually has some videos or, you know, expert
And they're
descriptions
short
of
videos.
things.
It's like 2 minutes.
Yeah,
Nice.
this is what
I like that.
predicting looks like, and then you can watch it for
Got it.
Sure.
and you know they're geared towards typical readers, but if you know kind of where your student is at, it's going to apply with maybe some modifications.
And then just for online books, Epic Reads is one or digital sources, and they've been really generous this year by offering, because of COVID, they've been giving families free accounts, and as an educator, you get a free account. So, you can
And it just has books online?
yeah, but
okay.
just a really good variety, and you can search by the search engine is very broad. So if you want to search.
And you can create collections, and you can assign them to students.
Oh,
They
very
can be
cool.
read to you. You can create quizzes.
They have videos. I try to hide those usually.
Yeah, they do. But they have they have a lot of good nonfiction. Like if you're looking for pop star books and things like that.
They
lots
have
of those.
more that's like media culture related.
Yeah.
Things from shows, things
exactly.
celebrities, that kind of thing.
Yeah, lots of graphic novels and things like that too. But then you can also, what I like too, is if you search, you can search by reading level, and you can search by age, but you can also search by tags like learning to read, and then they'll give you a variety of texts that are at a very simplified beginning reading stage.
Yep. And you can search by speech sound.
Oh,
Really?
I didn't know that. There you go.
Yes.
Perfect.
Wonderful.
That's really good.
Yeah.
And then Reading A to Z also is it's good in the sense that we were talking about this yesterday, Danielle, where it provides so much choice again and autonomy for a student, so they can you can set the levels. So if they're only at a reading, or if they're at a reading level N, they're looking at all the books that they will know that they can kind of read and be successful.
Yeah. And they also have like a variety of topics and presentations. Like they have like real life pictures versus clip art pictures in their books. And great. Any more?
Just our blogs. Should we do a shout out?
There's a few educator or homeschool type blogs that have been useful for resources. So Measured Mom tends to be one that we go to just because it's very comprehensive. Like you don't need to spend hours searching every inch of the web to find a resource if you know there's one blog out there that probably has it. So there's that. And then the Florida Center for Reading Research has a lot of great activities that are
Free
printable
materials,
and especially, in all areas of literacy, but especially phonics and phonological awareness. It's a really good place to go.
Fantastic. We'll put all of those on our episode page.
Yes.
For sure. Well, thank you guys
Thank you so much.
So
coming and joining us today. It was a really good chat about literacy.
Yeah. Learned a lot.
It's always fun to chat with you too.
Yeah.
Thanks, Eleanor.
Thank you so much. All right, you guys.